Mission of a true leader is that they're able to mentor and inspire other leaders. Do you have a vision, right? Your manager is not going to do that for you. High expectations of that vision. Customer success is all about advocacy. What are the things that you're bringing to the table? The organization you work for is also a customer. I don't think they know what they're looking for. Transformational leadership happens when you don't realize that changes are being done. Fear of it's going to take over my job. Proactive. That is what separates best CSMs from grade A CSMs. Use that IT project manager that we're one team, one fight. You're going to have a lot of roadblocks in customer success. And the words that you're thinking, the words that you choose, if you don't believe in a customer, if you don't believe in a product, you don't believe in the strategy, then that is going to be reflected in when you're talking to customers.
Welcome to this conversation on transformational leadership. I am thrilled to be hosting Renu Ahluwalia this morning. It is 11 a.m. here on the East Coast, 8 a.m. Pacific, and 8:30 p.m. in India. So thank you today. I hope our audience will find this conversation exciting. And before we get started, Renu, I wanted to take a moment and just say thank you. We haven't known each other too long, but all of the conversations that I've had with you so far have been so inspiring. So I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for joining me and agreeing to be on this live show with me.
Oh, well, you're very much welcome. I've enjoyed our conversations, and I'm so excited to be here today.
Very nice. So, quick introduction to our guest this morning. So, Renu Ahluwalia, she is currently serving as a customer success director at Trellix, and her career has been focused on driving growth and fostering very strong relationships with customers. So, prior to this role, you've also held leadership positions at companies such as UiPath, the American Psychological Association, and you've had a very illustrious career just from what you've described to me. So constantly delivering exceptional results and getting recognized for your achievements as well. So that's the gist of it. But why don't you dive a little bit into the details and tell folks what have been the salient points on your journey to customer success?
Yeah, so we talked a bit about this. I actually didn't traditionally start in customer success. When I started my career, I started it in management consulting. And I will say, I initially didn't take my career very seriously. I had just graduated college, I had just graduated grad school, I've been working quite a bit in studying that I was like, I want to go enjoy and travel and do other things. So I used to do just the bare minimum at work to go to pass by. And it wasn't until 2009, I think and I talked about this, but I was crossing the street and apparently didn't look the right way. And I was hit by a car and I basically flew across the street physically from the impact of the car and ended up herniating 3 discs in my back, 2 in my neck. And I even remember, I don't remember the actual accident anymore, but I remember I was wearing this work suit because it was after work. And the ambulance folks were like cutting up my clothes. And I was like, no, not this outfit, please. No, not this one. But it was a pretty big deal. And then I was actually caught at fault because I was not in an actual proper crosswalk. I happened to cross in the middle of the road somewhere that didn't have it. So it was wild, but it really changed the trajectory of my life. Initially, like I put on quite a bit of weight. I barely could walk, maybe 2 feet, couldn't check the mail. Like everything was painful. And it was a very negative, dark place in my life. And the only thing I knew I had control over at this point was like, well, I need in America, in order to have insurance, you need a job. So at that time, now they have it's different rules. So I was like, okay, I need to start taking work more seriously for my health purposes. And at that point, because I had such limited mobility, I started celebrating the small wins, right? Like, hey, I lost 5 pounds by eating a little bit better. I started practicing yoga and eventually became a yoga teacher. And that helped in what I call the turtle movement. It was like small changes, eventually compounding into bigger changes.
Yeah.
And that helped really build the confidence in myself, then eventually impacted my work. And why
Yeah.
I bring all this up is that I think is relative one for anyone's personal journey, but mindset is everything, right? And so
Yes.
when I was going into management consulting, I fell into customer success, right? Part of management consulting is business development and
Yeah.
growing those positions. But eventually I came to you're going to have a lot of roadblocks in customer success. And
Yep.
the words that you're thinking, the words that you choose is really vibrates among other folks. If you don't believe in a customer, if you don't believe in a product, you don't believe in the strategy, then
Yeah.
that is going to be reflected in when you're talking to customers. And
Yeah.
then it is mindset is important in here that what I talked about the turtle movement, customer change doesn't happen overnight and it's those small wins. And if you can consistently celebrate those small wins with your customers, that it really then shows like the impact of it and that the small wins turn into a bigger win. Like if you got a 5% return on the stock market, that's a
Yeah.
huge win. Imagine a 5%
Yes.
return with your customer, like, and then that builds into 10% and so forth. Yeah, formally didn't come into customer success until about 2012. And it was sort of this hybrid role of management consulting, but also then they were like, okay, we're building a SaaS solution. We need more
Mhm.
folks to come into this solution, formalize what customer success was. And this is another pivot point because they gave me the problem child customers. And I remember my first
Yeah.
meeting where the customer did not make eye contact. It was like, hey, we're not renewing. You're wasting your
Yeah.
time. We are unhappy. No one's using this renewal project. And I mean, it was just me and the customer in the room. There was no one else. And so I was like, your experience, 100% valid.
Yeah.
And we're going to agree with everything you're saying. Because when you're that upset, you need to get those words out, sort of in the
Yes.
dark period that I was in. You need to feel those feelings. You need the customer to feel those feelings. And they say, okay, well, this is the baseline of where we are today.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? You have 6 7 months of this software. Where are we going from there? And so for me it was, for this customer, being consistent with them and then
Yeah.
really listening to the feedback. I think a lot of people who have customers who complain forget that they're still engaging with you, and that engagement and feedback is gold. Like the and what they can provide to you, because the worst scenario is when you have a customer who doesn't give you any information, because at least information you can take it from somewhere. um
Yes.
and I think,
So true.
yeah, and for that whole project eventually got promoted because they were like, we didn't think this customer was going to renew. They're now on the customer boards, excited because they are seeing the changes. They have caused impact that we want now other customers to do. And I was
Yeah.
providing that consistent framework for them. And then eventually, like, my real formal customer success came with UiPath. They are a technology automation AI organization. And when I started in 2018, it was much more of a technical role. And I am
Yeah.
not a technical person by any means. And so it was a huge learning curve. But what I did bring to the table and I really held on to was my ability to build relationships with folks, being trusted advisor, to being that translator of technology into plain English and being like, well, what is the impact? How are you doing this? Because most of our customers don't speak in those technical words that we're used
Yeah.
to, don't necessarily understand If I have a blue button instead of a red button, what does that mean to me today? And I say that with a lot with, fears of AI. Yes, AI can provide a lot of goodness in customer success and to our customers, but being able to write well and communicate well and showing like the impacts of what technology can do is still something AI is won't be able to do anytime soon.
Yeah.
So being able to develop that skill internally is going to be much more critical as you move. And that was my selling point there. And then eventually helping the organization build like a global offering of customer success here. And yeah, I just started at Trellix, which has been 3 weeks, and I'm excited to be the individual contributor.
They are truly lucky to have you. I mean, in those 5 minutes, you have described such a range of topics that if we can hone in and dive deeper, we can just talk about every single one of these nuggets that you've mentioned. Mindset is everything. Change doesn't happen overnight. Being consistent. And I've talked about consistency even outside the realm of CS. Consistency is everything, being repetitive. It's not about excelling that one time, but the consistency brings practice. I think my kids sometimes even say, if I do this for 30 days, they told us, if you do this for 30 days, it becomes a habit. So I'm going to try this. And that's the mindset, so to speak. Engagement and feedback. I've never been upset with an angry customer or somebody that is giving me negative feedback, simply because feedback is truly a gift. It is more upsetting, or rather, it is more unsettling to have a customer who doesn't speak. And then that they have put up walls and barriers, and they are
100%.
yeah, they are getting ready to look elsewhere. And that's the customer that I fear more than the customer that is being loud. Building relationships, being that trusted, everything. And then AI. We'll touch upon all these points just a little bit. You mentioned being an individual contributor. Which one gives you a better? I don't believe that to be a transformational leader, being a manager or an individual contributor sort of sets you back. But meaning both of them are equally effective in giving you the platform to be that leader. That said, is there one versus the other that allows you to better shape your customers' journey, individual contributor?
I don't think so. I think with the title as an executive leader, it may
Yeah.
open doors much easier, right? Like someone's like, I'm
Yes.
vice president, and they're like, oh, I
Yes.
want to go in a room and talk to the vice president. I think the recognition of a true leader is that they're able to mentor and inspire other leaders. And you don't
Yes.
have to do that with the title. That is just a naturally inherent mentorship of folks. And so when I look at leadership, there are like 3 or 4 qualities. One, do you have a vision, right? Like, what is
Yeah.
that vision that you're set for? Whether that is personally, which I think everyone should do, like, because that helps you guide your career trajectory instead of reacting
Yes.
to. And then, what is the vision that you have as you're making an impact for the company? Your manager is not going to do that for you. You need to be
Yes.
the one to do that for yourself.
Yep.
To then hold expectations, right? So the expectations, high expectations of that vision. Like, this is the vision I see, and these are the expectations I have. So if you're a team person, you have those expectations for your team members. But
Yeah.
as an individual contributor, you have that for yourself. And then you also then can inspire others to that as well, because they see that you're making an impact. And
Yeah.
then 3, we talked about mindset, but I
Yes.
think there is something to see an advocate, right? Customer success is all about advocacy. So it's advocating for, I've had this happen in the past where we have 43 different tech stacks where we need to input information internally within an organization.
Yeah.
Imagine how much time that is. And so putting that information and being proactive to folks in that, saying, okay, I understand I'm an individual contributor, but this tech is not working for our organization. Those
Yeah.
are the proactiveness internally that you could bring. And then lastly, like, a little bit of lightness and humor, right? I'm not saying everything's a joke, but attitude, mindset, whatever you want to call it, if you're not bringing complete joy into what you're doing, then like, why
Yes.
are other people going to want to follow you? Like, no one wants to
Yeah.
work with the person who's screaming at them all the time.
Yeah.
They want to enjoy the conversations they're having with folks, even if it's a difficult conversation, but they know that
Yeah.
you care. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah, honesty is important, but the way you deliver the message is just as important for it to be accepted. If somebody's not receiving it, and you've completely lost message anyway. So advocacy and being proactive in advising, that little bit of advisement is definitely something that our customers, they don't always, they know what they want to achieve, but sometimes a little bit of advocacy along the way as to how to get there might prove in their best interest as well. So it comes from a good place. You touched upon this point about shaping minds. Do you have a vision, and how you expect that vision to be followed? So this phrase always sticks with me, and it's not realm of CS, but great leaders don't just lead teams, they inspire or create other leaders. And what does this mean to you?
So I want to talk about it from an individual contributor point of view. There are a few things. One, I personally have a vision for what I do, why I get up every day, right?
Yeah.
Whether for someone it is like, hey, I have a child. For me, it's I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. Since I was a kid, that was a driving force within me. And so how am I doing that? And I think that's very important because then you can say, yes, what are you saying yes to when people ask you for help? And what are you saying no to? Two
Yeah.
relationships are really important to me. And so developing that, whether that's internally within the organization or mentorship, even if I didn't have a formal mentorship program within an organization, I have mentored folks to
Yeah.
say, whether that's giving advice to them. I've had folks who are like, well, I do business development, but now I want to do project management. Well, I have project management background. Here's what you need. Let's talk through that. What are the things that you're bringing to the table and really inspiring that belief in them that they can make that shift?
Yeah.
And then three is really important is iterating, right? Like, so you see you yourself or within the company saying, yes, I can be an advocate. Yes, I can do the benchmarks, but is this still working? And am I still meeting the goals and the vision and the expectations that I set out
Yeah.
to do? And has the environment changed that I need to iterate what I'm doing?
So if you had to pick one thing out of the ones that you've listed, what is that stake in the ground for you? That this is me, this is my leadership North Star.
My leadership North Star, honestly, is advocacy and the
Yeah.
impact I make with that advocacy. If I am not there, if I am just doing the administrative work over and over again,
Yeah.
which is important, then that's not me really providing leadership to them.
And that's true CS, isn't it? You
Yeah.
are looking to be managing the relationship with the outcome. The expected outcome is always what's best for the customer. So they are at the center of all the activities, and that advocacy plays a big role in making sure things are working out for them. So that's amazing. And is there something that your leaders have that you've looked up to? I mean, across your career paths or across even other, in general, leadership means you learn from others. Some things you take and carry forward as these are things that I want to take forward. But there's also things like, oh, I definitely don't want to be doing that. That is not what I expected from my leader. So what is that? What are some things that you have looked up to in your leaders and that you've carried forward?
I want to expand on that and then I'll answer the question. I think the
Sure.
other thing for folks is like, you don't have to have a direct leader to say, I want to
Yes.
emulate that characteristic,
Yes.
right? Like, you could look
Yes.
at leadership from like Barack Obama and says he's a very articulate speaker. I want to pick out
Absolutely.
that characteristic in myself. There is, you pick and choose what you see and say, hey, this is what I feel. These people have this
Yeah.
characteristic. just because you don't report to them, but you like their style and what they're doing, you can still
Yeah.
emulate. So when I was telling you initially that I didn't take my career very seriously
Yeah.
when I first started, I had a boss who kind of hinted, his name was Don, and he kind of could smell that I wasn't really doing more than I can. And I didn't realize that he noticed that. And
Yeah.
so he would bring me in and he kind of would do this like Socrates style questioning on a problem that would happen. Like, say, we're missed a deadline. Renu, what do you think
Yeah.
we should be doing? Be like, well, so and so didn't have this information. Well, maybe we can be a little more proactive. And he's like, that's a great idea. Why don't you go follow up on that? Which now I know when you bring a problem to a detention, you're probably going to be assigned that problem. But what I
Yeah.
loved was that he didn't like, so he made it a conversation and he
Uh-huh.
honestly emulated that belief in me that like, hey, I can go do this myself versus ordering me to go do it and really helping me think through and giving me the space to reflect on the process versus
Yeah.
shouting the answer to me. And so
Yeah.
that is something that I try to emulate is like giving that step back and understanding the intention behind an action that someone does, but also not going through and exploring all the different angles with them.
Absolutely. And it also spurs introspection, doesn't it? It makes people think about the impact that their actions are having or the inactions are having for that matter. So it definitely thinking through a situation so that you, as a leader, can, instead of telling people what they should do, make them think for what should happen.
And it creates that buy-in because you're bringing the people along. 'Cause
Yes.
it comes inherently from them, right?
Yes, absolutely creates a bond and a mindset once again. And so, as a leader, then, when it comes to making some of these choices, making some impactful, have you ever thought about decisions or like this is the norm, this is how things have always been done, and this is what is expected? And anything that your peers or your colleagues thought wouldn't work, but you double down on because you believed in it.
Yes. So many examples, but I'll give you one in particular that's more CS related. So
Yeah,
we all have to do business reviews, right? That's kind
yeah.
of but for most folks, business reviews are like, these are your support tickets, and this is what you're doing, and this is what you
Yes.
need to do. Now imagine a customer, they have to go through how many vendors that they have, and everyone wants to
Yeah,
do a business review. And I think their eyes would roll back. Like, why are they paying attention to you? So I had
yeah,
this person, salesperson, and he had a warmer relationship with an executive. And I was like, no, I want a business review with the executive
yeah,
because I want to understand their goals. And I did a bunch of research on the company and I have a point of view to bring to like HR on onboarding and how they could use our technology to improve the HR and onboarding process.
yeah,
And the salesperson was like, no, I don't think that's such a great idea. He's never brought us in. And I was like, look, I
yeah,
brought the benchmarks from other companies, from other organizations. I really think this is something they could be doing. The only reason he let me go through, because I disagreed with him, was
yeah,
because we've cross collaborated so much that I was using the trust that I had developed internally within the organization and with him in particular to be
yeah,
able to have this presentation. And the funny thing with that, I wasn't 100% on the mark either, where I was like, I did this research online and this is what I think you should be doing. And he was like, the customer, as I was doing the business review, was like, yeah, that's something we show to the public, but internally, this is another priority. But because I brought a perspective, because I cared, and because I made an impact, they were like, we're willing to have a better conversation with you on what we think we could do with HR onboarding that we
yeah.
hadn't discussed with you because you brought a perspective and that you cared enough to bring content and back to that data up instead of just saying the same old sort of business review with them.
Yeah, and 100%, a little bit of change, something different definitely catches the eye, definitely gets people to contribute, engage. That engagement is key, isn't it? Instead of just sitting in front and receiving. From a customer's perspective, like you said, they go through so many vendors, and every vendor wants to be heard every month, every quarter, once in 6 months, whatever the time frame. It's hard from the customer's perspective to even assimilate. How do you differentiate yourself then as a true customer success or customer advocate, or advising them on what they need to be doing? So 100%. And then working with your salesperson on, I know this is different from what you've seen before, but it will work. Give me that. So making sure that your feet are firmly planted on the ground, sticking with your belief right there. So then as a CS leader, you must have faced so many challenges. And CS, even today, I think as a practice, even in tech companies where you know you need it and you
Yeah.
know that it's a department that adds value, but there are perspectives within the organization about CS or about how it should be tied to, it can be and it should be, but how should it be tied to line of revenue? Any of those perspectives, what do you believe? Do any of those need to change? In your experience, how has CS been perceived in in the organization?
So we talked about advocacy a lot,
Yeah,
and you and I talked a little bit about this offline, but so I refined it a little bit. But
yeah,
CS has been so outwardly focused on the customer that they
yeah,
forget that the organization you work for is also a customer. And
yes,
I will say you have three customers when you are a CS person. You have yourself, because you have to be the North Star in your career. You have
yeah,
your customer, where you need to
yeah,
understand what their outcomes are, why they bought your software, and help them guide. And then you also have your organization. If you don't have the relationships across the company, if you don't understand the goals of your organization and how what you're doing individually and as a department do impact those goals,
yeah,
then all the things we do in CS, actually, we need to be doing it internally with the organization, right? Like, these
yeah,
are the goals of the company. Okay, well, every company wants to retain customers because software budgets are shrinking. Well, how does
yeah,
CS do that? Well, it's
yeah,
expensive to get another customer.
yeah.
It's much easier to keep your
To
customer and
retain,
grow
yes,
that, right?
exactly.
That is like the ethos of customer success. But when we talk about success plans or NRR, that's they don't understand that in the financials of within an organization that you work for. So you have to translate that, saying, "Hey, I as a CS person am keeping this customer, growing this revenue by X dollars, and that is why we need to be keeping this." Or like even when I see a lot of organizations not having like cut up customer success operations. And so
Yeah,
making that case for that headcount, these are things that
yeah.
you need to be having to show them like the impact financially that we're missing out on.
Yeah, and if there was this magic formula, it would be easy, wouldn't it? It would be
Yeah.
easy that, hey, you do things A, B, and C. A is worth this much, B is worth this much, and have you accomplished then the outcome? It's not that easy. And because it's
No.
not that simple, there's a little bit more effort that needs to be put in as a CS leader to convince, like you rightly said, it's not just about external customers, it's your internal customers as well. So that truly is the transformational leadership. And relationships are important. Managing relationships are not easy, and it is important. And at the end of the day, it impacts whether the customer stays with you or churns. So 100%, there is revenue that you are impacting. How you showcase that, I think that's the big, every organization does that differently. So
Speaking the language of your company in terms that they understand. We already
speaking the
do that with our
language.
customers, but we
Yes,
don't do that
yes,
internally with our company.
very true. Speaking the language
Yeah.
of the company, that is very important. So then are the customers looking for transformational leaders, or are our customers looking for just leader? And you can take that either internal customers and external, either way. Are they looking for just leadership, or are they looking for transformational leadership?
I don't think they know what they're looking for, right? Honestly, like
Okay.
I'll be a little controversial here. They
Yeah.
don't know. It is of transformational leadership happens when you don't realize that changes are being happened. happen, right? Like
Yes.
transformation happens as you're doing what we talked about, the advocacy and the consistency and being able to communicate in a way that people can process the information. And
Yeah.
that is all transformational. But an
Yep.
organization doesn't realize that that's what they need. But inherently, with customer success, we know that's what we're supposed to be doing, and
Yeah.
it's fundamental in our DNA. So, as a leader, you're the one that has to create that vision for everyone, as what we talked about vision earlier.
So true. People don't necessarily know that this is going to be transformational. They're just looking
Yeah.
for an answer. They're looking for somebody to show them the way, and that's pretty much it. You talked a little bit about AI when you were thinking about translating the tech needs or the technical specs for your customers and bridging that true technical to non-technical sort of making it more conversational for your customers. Now, AI today, the world of AI that we are in, it's a reality. What can CS leaders do to get the most, to make the most of where AI is? It's going to take some time for everybody to understand how to leverage it, but there's definitely a need to leverage so
Mhm.
that you can scale some of these initiatives. Everybody talks about doing more with less. And is AI going to be a big factor in doing more with less?
100%. But I will say that most people don't. We all know this,
Yeah.
that if you work in the technology field, but those outside, the data is not there to build
Yep.
these like robust models and create this like AI engine. And then on top of that, there's the fear of it's going to take over my job. I think
Yeah.
internally at CS, it is, we do so much administrative work in
Yes.
customer success
Yes.
that's where we should be utilizing AI in that, hey, I should not have to figure out if my customer's not doing product utilization, if they have an open support ticket for more than 30 months, if they're complaining in my customer communities, wouldn't it be wonderful if an AI robot just gathered that data for you so then you
Yeah.
can then show like, hey, this customer's at risk with real data versus, hey, let me get the CS sentiment on it. Just because if you have a portfolio of like 40 customers, how are you supposed to do that with all of that customers?
Yeah. 100% agree. The data isn't all there. And then
Yeah.
generative AI, you hear so many things. It is learning as it goes. So the data that we are feeding an AI engine is what is going to read and produce the best possible outcome. But the lowest hanging fruit is all of these administrative tasks that are a
Mm.
time suck. Like, you need to do it. You don't have enough hours in a day. I've always said 2 hands, 1 head, 24 hours in a day. What can one person do? And if you're going to spend time focused on the administrative work, it doesn't really help you think strategically and drive the biggest impact items, doesn't it?
Being proactive. That is what separates the best CSMs from
Yeah.
like just the everyday CSM, is those who can see the trends, be proactive with the customers, being able to have those initiatives. You can't do that if you're doing administrative work all the time.
Very true. And that goes back to one of the first things we talked about, right? Creating other leaders. So
Yeah.
in CS, we see this so often. You have this need to pivot. There is a need to pivot because you're corralling so many different things. There's so many things coming at you. You absolutely can't be following a scripted set of activities every single day. If that's what you're doing, it's truly not the right role. So making sure people do have the ability to think on their feet and then drive that outcome. Can you truly be a leader in any seat in an organization?
100%. The leadership is what
Okay.
you bring to the table and how you hold yourself to that standard. It is not a title. Like I said earlier, yeah, a title might open up a room to a door, but it is passion, it is what you care about, it is perspectives that you bring. It's being able to communicate a clear message and being
Yeah.
empathetic to the response and the feedback that you're getting, and that's what makes it truly weird.
So let me dive just to dig a little bit deeper on that. You said titles open doors, and we have in CS today so many people that are early in career. How do you make sure they are not disillusioned because they are unable to open the doors, and yet the expectation is that they need to take ownership, be proactive, make things happen? But folks, whether they are internal in an organization or external customers, may not be giving them the actual time of day to actually make that impact. How do you not make sure that
Yeah,
that person is
I see that all the time where
yeah,
we, as CS, we may have a relationship only with the project manager of the software.
yeah,
And they're like, oh, you're a CS person. You should be talking to the CISO, the CIO, an executive suite and having that executive conversation. Not stuck in the IT project manager role. There are a few ways I think you can do that, especially as you're a junior. One, use that IT project manager. That person also wants to be able to facilitate a growth career, right? And how is the software
yes,
you're delivering helping with that? So when you have successes, put the talking points, put those benchmarks, and feed it to your IT project manager so that they can showcase it to their leadership. And then even say, hey, maybe we can co-present it. Not everyone's going to be okay with that, but at
yeah,
least give that suggestion there and see like what works and doesn't work. Two, we talked about cross collaboration. Yes,
yeah,
as a junior person, I might not be able to open a door, but the VP of sales might be able to open the door if he's in your
yes,
portfolio. Maybe they want to talk to a product manager, and products managers love talking to customers, but don't always have that ability to talk to folks in the field because they're too busy developing product. Bring
yeah.
what you have to the table and then go and make that pitch to those people internally that could help you open that door.
So it's the shared victories, isn't it? The shared objective, maybe different drivers, but the victory and the win is shared, and there's benefit
One
for
team, one
everybody's.
fight. I say that all the time. We're one
Yeah,
team, one fight. Like it's not
yeah,
my customer, it's our customer, and
our
how are we doing?
customer,
Yeah, how
exactly.
are we
Uh,
doing it?
yeah, and not your customer, and I'm not intervening, but it's 100%. It is our customer. One fight, one win. We are 10 minutes over, so I do want to close out, though it has been fun. I could go on and just start digging deeper a little bit into all of this. I do want to ask, what would you want people to take away from today's conversation? If there was one thing you would want people to take from this, what would that be?
I would say being proactive in your own journey and being able to choose, being intentional of why you're in customer success and how are you differentiating yourself because you are in charge of that career and those actions that you're taking that will set
Yeah.
you apart from anyone else.
Wonderful. Renu, it has been a pleasure. It is so inspiring, like I said, just talking to you, learning about your journey, your self-transformation, following certain downs in your own life journey that have impacted your career journey, and then now taking that forward to inspire others across the spectrum of folks inside your organization or outside. This is truly amazing. I have enjoyed our conversation. Please come back.
Me
I would
too.
love to host you again.
Oh, and one other thing. You know who I think
Yeah,
does the best business reviews is the year
yeah.
end with Spotify when they're like, "Oh, these are the 10 songs you've listened to this year and this is what you're doing and this is the artist that you would want to talk to," and they do that video recording. Obviously, we can't do that all the time, but like that is like the fun and the business review in a way that's like so outside the box.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Not intended to be a plug, but ended up being a plug. But honestly, Renu,
They're
this
not
is
paying me either. I was just like, to me, it's a brilliant business review that the
yeah.
year-end review from Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like a year in review. Here's what you did throughout the throughout the year. These are the artists. And based on that, there's your advocacy. Based on that, we think you will enjoy such and such. Amazing. So much to peel back and so many layers there that we can discuss for future conversations as well. But thank you so much, Renu. It has been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure chatting with you, and come back again. Thanks to my
Yes,
audience, and
bye-bye.
thanks to the Thinkly team. They are always fabulous in facilitating these leading up to the conversations and even after. So truly a pleasure being a part of this group. Bye. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.